What's up everybody, hope you're having an amazing day so far. My name is Phil and today's video we're going to check out the Neural Modeler A2 architecture, which has been brand new released by Steve Atkinson in collaboration with Tone 3000, and then compare it also against the A1 architecture as well as ToneX V2. That was a riff which I recorded with the Marshall JVM OD1 Orange Mode capture of the Neural Modeler A2 architecture, which is also available for free download at Tone 3000 at my profile. Link is going to be in the description below, so if you like the tone, go ahead and grab that profile now. In case you're absolutely not familiar with this topic at all, let's start from the very first beginning. Neural Modeler is an amp capturing technology which has been around somewhere around the ballpark of 3 to 4 years, created by Steve Atkinson originally as a hobby project, as a passion project, but very quickly, because of its open source nature and its absolute incredible accuracy, became one of the absolute main staples within the amp capturing technology game. And NAM, in its formerly known version, the A1 architecture, was already incredibly accurate when it comes to the top end response, how the low end was feeling, how all of the profiles were feeling. I did a few videos on how it compared against ToneX, also against ToneX V2 when it came out. Did a lot of videos on Neural Modeler and NAM in general as a subject. And in today's video, of course, naturally, as the architecture A2 came out, I just thought, let's give it a try. Let's see what A2 brings to the table. What is it all about? Now, you might ask yourself, if we got the Neural Modeler architecture A1 and it was so accurate and so cool, where is the need for a Neural Modeler A2 architecture? The answer in that lies simply in the fact that the A1 architecture was very CPU taxing. It was very heavy on the CPUs. You needed to have quite a chunky PC in order to run Neural Modelers, you know, like without jitter, without artifacts. And also when it comes to the hardware domain, it was really hard to actually get, for a good cost proposition, hardware which could play those A1 architecture models. And that's exactly where the NAM A2 architecture comes into play, because it not only does it offer a more accurate depiction of what you're actually capturing or profiling or whatever you want to call it, it also does it at a lesser CPU payload. That means your CPU is not being used as heavily with the A2 models compared to the A1 models. So we're getting more accuracy, better efficiency, and that's not even everything else. There's also something which is called the slimmable approach. Now, the A2 models are meant to work either in their full glory, in the full context, but also on restricted hardware. There should be a slimmable option. Before that, you had to retrain the capture with a different weight process, so a different setup of the neural network, so to speak. And now, basically, 2 of these layers are being trained at the same time, and there's basically a toggle between the NAM A2 full profile, which gives all the accuracy, and the NAM A2 light profile, which in all of the testing which has been conducted by Tone 3000 and Steve Atkinson resulted in something which lies accuracy-wise somewhere around the ToneX V2 captures and the NAM A1 captures. So that in itself is already a huge deal, because this will bring NAM much more onto the forefront for different guitar-related hardware in the future, and I'm really excited for what's going to come with NAM. My very own personal prediction is that within the next, let's say, 5 years, neural models will become as common ground as impulse responses are today in order to emulate cabinets and microphone combinations. It's just a matter of fact that a lot of companies are now kind of, I wouldn't say jumping on the hype train, but kind of seeing the writing on the wall, actually implementing neural models into their hardware units. Some hardware units right now are doing that via conversion, so they are taking the neural models, converting them into their own proprietary standard, but often I have to say that does not sound good at all, and one prime example of that one is the Valtone GP5. It does have its cool stuff. I do like it a lot as, you know, like a thing to play around with, and I think this can actually save you in a situation where your amp or your pedal board breaks down. But when it comes to NAMM and using that on this device, I don't think this is the right thing. Speaking of hardware processors, there are a few devices which are capable of running full native NAMM models. One of them I'm holding right here in my hand, that's the Dimehead NAMM player. I made countless videos on this one already here. A really cool piece of gear. I really dearly love this one. A second favorite is the Sonolab StompStation Pro, which is also capable of running full native NAMM models. These two devices are basically on par. They just, you know, differ a little bit gimmick-wise what they have. For example, the Dimehead NAMM player has this phantom-powered XLR connection, while the StompStation Pro has a dual input and output thing. Not yet fully stereo capable when it comes to NAMM, but that might be a question of time. Let's see if that's going to happen in a future firmware upgrade. But speaking of firmware upgrades, these two devices have recently received firmware updates so that they also can support the brand new A2 architecture within days basically of release of the A2 architecture, which I personally think is a testament to both of these companies delivering on their promise to keep these devices up to date, and is really cool. That's enough talking for now. Let's listen to some riffs with some different A2 captures which I made, and then we're going to go over to the reprocession and analyze a little bit on what are the differences. Are they so big? Are they dramatic? Are they negligible in that regard? So first, a few riffs. I now got the reprocession opened up over here, and I'm gonna structure the analysis part of this video in 3 different portions. We're first gonna check out the clips by themselves, just rolling through the riff over here. I'm gonna loop that and then just play along through the different profiling technologies while we're listening to that. So just that we are having like an A/B test over here. Next up, we're then going to go ahead and do the Null-Test, although I do believe that we're kind of at the point where the Null-Test does gives a little bit insight, but kind of is in the ballpark of diminishing returns. I still want to offer that to you. I don't have the nice numbers crunched like Leo always does on his channels, but at least you can audibly hear some differences here and there. And then last but not least, we're going to play actually the profiles and compare them to each other. The only thing which I cannot do, unfortunately, is actually play through the amplifier in the playing section, because I did the profiles when the amp was really loud so that I got a nice sounding profile out of that one. And I'm doing these type of videos in the middle of the night. Unfortunately, I cannot then crank up the amplifier. Sorry for that, but that's what we got the clips here for. So we're going to play the clips. We first got the Marshall JVM recording itself, then we got NAMM A2 full, followed by NAMM A2 Lite, so that we can listen to the difference between that. Then we got NAMM A1 and ToneX V2. We're going to first start off with the amplifier, and I'm just going to flicker through, and you can see that by the highlighted S over here in the Reaper section, which track is currently active. But I'm going to also try to make it sure that there's like a text over here in the field down below in the video. So let's go ahead to the listening test. For me, as somebody who is very much into capturing amplifiers, listening to the differences, I must really admit that it's very hard to tell differences by now. Now, looking at this from a broader perspective, I do believe that the ToneX V2 profiles with something which is this, like small and affordable, like the ToneX One Plus, which is a fantastic unit, by the way, demo coming soon at some point, really is hard to distinguish between all of those different things when it comes to a mix context. So if there are additional instruments or something like that, I personally think it would not really matter in that regard. However, there's a catch to that. When listening to the isolated tracks like we did over here, I do hear that the ToneX V2 lacks a little bit on the bottom end and the top end. There's a little bit of that, fidelity missing out, which really comes to life when we're listening to the Marshall JVM and the NAMM A2 full in comparison. NAMM A2 full clearly takes the cake over here. I do think that NAMM A1 sounds better than the NAMM A2 Lite, but they are very close to each other. So it's kind of like a gradual slope going down below, but it's very interesting to see that we still can gain some benefits, even though if you would have asked me a year ago, I would have said NAMM A1 is perfect. There is no difference at all. And I do stand by that still. There's not really a difference, but there actually is. So let's listen to the Null-Test. I got everything prepared for the Null-Test section of this video over here. Let me first showcase how basically deadpan they are on the phase alignment. So I made sure that they are bang on, and you can see on this combined waveform over here, they are basically spot on phase alignment wise. Sometimes due to the non-linearity of these captures, and because I rendered all of that stuff out, you can see that there's a little bit of a shift going on, for example, over here, but the tops and troughs of the waveform are basically dead on, and that also really comes to show in the Null-Test itself. So let me go ahead so that it looks nicely, and then we can start the actual Null-Test section. This riff is going to be looped over here, the loop section, and we're going to solo out the Marshall JVM, listen to that first, and then start bottom to top. So first with the ToneX, and moving our way up to the NAMM A2 full profile technology. So again, in my opinion, some truly interesting results which we're getting over here. For me personally, it is very clear that there's a gradual like ascent from ToneX to NAM A2 Lite to NAM A1 and then NAM A2 Full. Like there's like a gradual slope quality wise in regards of how the Null-Test is basically canceling out each other. Taking into consideration that we're talking here about non-linear characteristics, the results which we're getting is pretty incredible, and it's amazing that NAM A2 Full is working that well. There is, I mean, it's such a huge difference to anything else out there. I mean, even ToneX, which back then when it was released was so much, you know, like apart from the competition when it comes to quad cortex, Kemper, and all of that stuff. It was way better back then, and now NAM A2 Full is kind of the same thing compared to ToneX V2. Capturing technology has come a long way in the last 4 years. Let's get to the final part of the analysis portion of this video, and that's me just playing through NAM A2 Full, NAM A2 Lite, and NAM A1. I'm going to describe what I'm hearing, what I'm feeling while playing the guitar. However, if you want to make your own judgment, these models will be available at Tone 3000 for you to download and to check on your own, and not only those of the JVM OD1, but also a very gain-heavy capture of my EVH boosted by the MXR M77 Custom Badass Modified Overdrive. However, let's get right into this one over here. I can toggle the different tracks via the exclusive solo function over here, and the purple one on top is NAM A2 Full, the mid section is NAM A2 Lite, and then down below the lighter green is NAM A1. All the same profile, all the same settings, but we're first going to start with the NAM A2 Full. My first impression when playing through the NAM A1 architecture is that the NAM A1 architecture is ever so slightly more mid-forward. It kind of pushes the mids a little bit more, while the NAM A2 Full sounds more balanced and more what the amplifier actually sounds like. As I said before, unfortunately, I cannot play that back for you because this would be super loud. However, you have to take my word for it in the end, but you can also eventually, hopefully, so hear the small minute differences between A2 Full and A1, where A2 Full just sounded a little bit more evened out, while the A1 being more mid-forward in that regard. Let's move over to the comparison between NAM A2 Full and NAM A2 Lite so that we kind of get an idea on what that's all about. I got over here the NAM A2 Lite, as I said before, and yeah, setting it up is basically just clicking on the slider and setting it below 0.5, and everything above 0.5 will give you the full architecture. So let's go ahead back to NAM A2 Full and play a little bit. Now, when it comes to comparing A2 Full against A2 Lite, I definitely can hear that the A2 full top end is way sweeter, for lack of a better term. It just sounds overall a little bit cleaner, a little bit crisper when using the full profile. A2 Lite, don't get me wrong, is very, very good sounding, very close to the real deal. Let's go ahead and compare A2 Lite against A1. And here again, a very similar picture. However, with that mid-forwardness of the A1 architecture, A1 just sounds a little bit more, I would say, sparklier, than the A2 Lite profile. So when it comes to basically an accuracy ranking, I would personally say that NAMM A2 Full is clearly the winner on top of everything. NAMM A1 is then shortly following after, and then NAMM A2 Lite is coming along, still sounding great. Now what I'm gonna do is, since you can already see that the top one is the NAMM A2 Full, I'm gonna compare that against the ToneX. So just that we have the biggest gap in difference quality-wise, so that we can see where the evolution of NAMM has brought us to. So again, A2 Full soloed, then to ToneX V2. I think that this comparison brings the advantages of A2 Full the most to the listener, meaning that the top end is a little bit more crisper, a little bit more cleaner, but especially there's a lot of improvement in the low end behavior. It's a lot fuller with the A2 Full. The ToneX kind of smooths out the top end and the bottom end. Also, from a gain perspective, that was always something which kind of bothered me with the ToneX, is that the gain was a little bit hollow. You had to gain it up to kind of match the same feel. Right over here, I deliberately chose to not change anything on the amplifier, just take the profile as it is. Of course, you can go ahead, you can now adjust the presence, the treble, the gain. You can get very close to what the A2 would eventually sound like, and then move from there on forward. So all of these capturing technologies are not bad at all there. In fact, really awesome. But here, clearly, the NAMM A2 Full out of the box takes the cake. Let's wrap up this video with some final thoughts and conclusions, which can go in separate directions. One direction would be, nowadays, it simply doesn't matter. Whether you're using ToneX V2, NAMM A2 Full, NAMM A2 Lite, NAMM A1, everything sounds fantastic. If you got one of these, one of the ToneX 1 models, and you're happy with how it works and how you set up things, keep that one. Don't go ahead and throw that out the window just to get the fanciest, newest thing, which then supports NAMM A2 Full. That would be stupid, because these things still sound pretty awesome. You know, if you are in the market for something new and you want to buy a NAMM 2 capable model, of course, get one of these over here. You can't go wrong with either of these. It depends a little bit on your particular use case. You got to read yourself into, look at a few tutorials to gather the info on which product is for you. But both of these are excellent choices for NAMM A1, NAMM A2, NAMM A Lite, whatever you want to use on that one. And who knows if, you know, like Veiltone, maybe not the GP5 because it runs on a different sample rate, but maybe the GP 150, 180 and whatnot else, maybe they will support NAMM A2 Lite at some point in time. And then they're also very viable options on the market for what they offer, what they cost. Fantastic stuff. So in that case, one of the conclusions could be, it doesn't really matter anymore. The other conclusion is, of course, NAM A2 full is definitely superior to the other capturing technology standards. So of course, if you want the best out of the best out of the best, then of course the road is clear, the pathway is clear. You go with NAM A2 full, and then my personal recommendation is the Dimehead NAM player, just because I like that unit so much. But if you want a little bit more of a stronger multi-effects suite and better connectivity, then the Sonolab Stomp Station Pro will be for you. There's also the Dark Glass Anagram, which is also an amazing unit from all what I've heard. And I'm pretty sure that they will also support NAM A2 full at some point in time, although I don't know the hardware technicalities. Yeah, overall, very exciting times. I think that Tone 3000 in collaboration with Steve Atkinson have created something truly unique by bringing NAM to the next level. NAM A2 full will at some point become an industry standard. I'm very, very sure about that one. I personally am excited, and I hope that you people out there learned something from this video. If you want to check out my Tone 3000 profile, just go down below in the link in the description below. You're going to find the profiles which I used over here. You're going to find also another profile which is both available in A1 and A2, so you can do your own comparisons. With that out of the way, I want to say a huge thank you to each and every one of you watching my videos. You don't know what it means to me. Hope to see you all in the next video, and until then, keep it metal.